All right, I think we're getting ready to start, so if everybody wants to find a seat, or you can stand, whatever's more comfortable. So I'd like to thank everybody for coming out today to the Jedediah Smith dedication. This is a big event. It's a monument there's only a few of these throughout the country that are dedicated just to Jedediah Smith, and we're very pleased to have one of these located right here within, right close to Fremont Indian State Park. So today the program is going to consist of some guest speakers. We've got some special visitors that'll be coming in to visit. We're going to start off today with a flag ceremony by a scout troop that is out of Richfield, Utah, Troop 602. They're going to lead us with a flag ceremony, Pledge of Allegiance. At the conclusion of that Pledge of Allegiance, we're actually going to invite our first speaker, Mayor Ogden from Richfield, to come up and speak, and from there he'll continue with the program and the announcements from there.
Attention, will the audience please arise? Color guard advance. Hand salute. Please say with me the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. 2. Color guard posts the colors.
Find a big rock. Sit there and hold it. Okay.
You can end it now.
Hey, look, there's a big rock. Color guard dismiss. The audience may be seated.
Good job, guys.
Go back there and we'll watch.
How much helmet?
Well, good morning. This is hold on to your hat weather. I guess that's just how springtime is. Oh, turn the mic on. That'll work better. How about now? Oh, that's way better. Okay. So I'm going to forget my notes and trust my memory. It's great to see so many of you out on this spring day. We're here to commemorate this monument, and there's a lot of people to thank, and I hope I don't miss anybody. I might likely do that if I don't look down at my notes, but thank you for coming. I imagine that when Jed Smith came through here, that like many of us, he stopped at the Dairy Queen and got a soda. And I reminded our speaker, who I'll introduce here in a minute, that all of us have probably drank a quart of soda on our way here today, and there's no restrooms close. However, there is over at the museum, and we encourage you to go over there. Thank you, Kevin, for your leadership here in this Fremont Indian State Park. I saw Commissioner Topham here. In my mind, you're all dignitaries. I see representatives here from the Forest Service. I know that the Forest Service has been very involved in this. Of course, Bob Leonard, the Fish Lake Forest archaeologist, has been he's been the main creator. Like if you were creating a fine meal, Bob put the meal together, organized it, worked so hard, and he's a great example of us, of determination. Much like Jed Smith, it is said by a lady named Wilcox that there is no chance, there is no destiny, there is no fate that can circumvent or hinder or control the firm resolve of a determined soul. And that's what Bob Leonard has been in this effort, and that's the kind of person that Jed Smith was. He was determined, he was amazing, and I'll introduce our speaker in a moment, but it's important that we recognize the fact that ATV registrations here in our state, I registered my ATV a week ago for $50 and it went through my mind, what does this go to? That is part of what paid for this wonderful monument. I want to recognize Mel Bowling is not here, but he has representatives here from Fish Lake. He's the Fish Lake National Supervisor, Fish Lake National Forest Supervisor. Jim Quitter, the Park Maintenance Foreman. Michelle Sorensen, who is a maintenance worker that helped with the construction of this monument. I mentioned Bob Leonard, but if you don't know Bob, he's a true character, and our world is short of true characters, and he's really one. The sculpture of this monument, artist Jacob Dean of Cedar City. Horses and Mules, Sun Studio, Half Moon Bay, California. Rocky Mountain Jamboree, and I'm not going to look over at these guys, because if I do, they're going to shoot a gun. I don't want to look at it right now. I want to encourage you to go over and look at the rendezvous setup. These guys, they stayed here all night. A week ago, they were up here in a snowstorm with Boy Scouts, and I also want to thank our Scout Troop 602 for doing a great job with the flags. They look beautiful in the wind. So there's so many. I hope I haven't forgotten anybody. If I have, Kevin, wherever you are, mention those if you would. So let me introduce our speaker today. Several years ago, Leo Lyman and I became acquainted, and he is a student of history, a teacher of history, a professor now at Dixie State University down in St. George, and has taught at BYU and many other places. Leo is an author, has written many books, and he was responsible of getting me involved in the Old Spanish Trail Association. And Stephanie Moulton is here, the president of the Fish Lake chapter of the Old Spanish Trail Association, and we recognize Stephanie and all of her work. The Old Spanish Trail did not come up this canyon. It went down past Monroe, across Poverty Flat, and down into Marysville that way. Jed Smith did come up here in 26 and again in 27, right through this canyon, and I'm sure Leo will talk more about it. But when I mention Leo, I just want to say this. When I grew up, and I played a lot of baseball as a boy, I had a neighbor named John Winkle. And the statement was always made about John Winkle. He had forgotten more than I would ever learn about baseball. And I think that we can make that same statement about Leo. He has forgotten more than I'll ever know about history. He is an excellent researcher and historian and author, and we are so fortunate to have him here today to talk about Jed Smith, a man that was truly an exceptional person. And to you young people that are here, he was exceptional for a lot of reasons, and Leo will talk about those. But one thing he knew how to do was to read and write. But even more special, he wrote his diaries, and if it weren't for that, we would not be meeting here today. He recorded what he saw and what he felt, what he experienced. He was truly an amazing American that was here in Mexico territory in 1826 and again in 1827. So I'm looking forward to hearing what Leo has to say, and I expect he'll say some things that are very important. He always does. Leo Lyman. Oh, yes, I had supposed to look over here at these guys. Oh, look at that. There they are. I think we might have a special recognition as part of this. If we look to the north, I can see some riders coming. This would be our backcountry horsemen representing those who traveled with Jed Smith. They're coming up here. Jed rode a mule. I think these guys are on horses, but we so much appreciate them.
Mayor Ogden, Captain Smith's at the river. He'll be along shortly, but set to start at your convenience.
Thank you very much. We'll go ahead without him. Thank you. Okay, Leo, take it away.
Thank you. This is my daughter. Brought my resources. You can learn all there is to know about Jed Smith from these two diary editions that are easy to find online cheap. This classic biography of him by a deaf-mute guy from Utah named Dale L. Morgan was published in 1953, and it's still the best there is, and it's available easy in almost any used bookstore. This is the new one done in the last 5 years by a Boise State, Idaho professor named Barton Barber. There's nothing I know about Jed Smith that's not in these 4 books, especially the diaries. I'm so grateful for this opportunity. He has been one of my heroes since I was 20 years old. And the canyon's been my favorite place for a lot longer than that. I'd already fished this creek 40 times before I was 20. In fact, my oldest son is here. He saw my dad pull a 5-pounder out of that creek, believe it or not. You probably don't believe it, but ask him. Jed, to me, is the greatest explorer in American history. You may see Lewis and Clark. They wrote more down, but he taught them some stuff too later. In fact, when he got down where I live in St. George and was trading with the Indians, they had some some marble, green marble from Grand Canyon, smoking pipe bowls. He sent one of those, Jed Smith sent one of those to William Clark. So they were close. John C. Fremont's more famous. John C. Fremont and his cartographer made a really good map. There is evidence that he got his information from Jed Smith's maps. At one point, a famous historian was going to write a biography of Fremont and call it The Pathfinder, because Jed Smith had almost been forgotten by the 1920s and 30s. He had been famous at one time, but had almost been forgotten, but was becoming well enough known because the first of the diaries had been located in the 1930s. And he renamed the book Fremont the Path Marker, using the stuff that was already known that Jed Smith had taught Fremont, who, remember, the Mormons studied. So Jed Smith relates to the decision to come to the Great Salt Lake Valley, even though he had been dead more than 15 years by that time. He had wanderlust. These great signs over here actually have a quote from his diary from this book edited by George Brooks, that diary wasn't found till 1967. Morgan, who couldn't speak very plainly, gave a talk in St. Louis to the Historical Society. He said, "We know the diary exists. Look in your attics." 1967, they found it within 4 months. But he was dying of cancer. It wasn't edited and published till 10 years later. And Utah ignored it. We really don't know much about Jed Smith in this state, except for a fine old English professor, Ed Geary, who's president of the Old Spanish Trail Association over in Emery County. He mentioned Jed Smith's diary, but I don't see many people who did. Even though Jed Smith was famous after the Morgan book came out, he's been forgotten by our two generations. And our job, and Bob has made great contributions, and the Forest Service and the State Park Service, by providing this. Now what we got to do is get some signs on I-70 that tell it's here. Smith answered an ad in the St. Louis newspaper in 1822. William Ashley, who had been the lieutenant governor and was founder of the Missouri Fur Company, advertised for enterprising young men who want to come to the Rocky Mountains and make a lot of money trapping beaver pelts for high-top beaver hats, the best felt there is. Vanity of men, not just European, but Americans. These signs do a very good job. That's one of the little slips. They could have said American and European fashion. They could have said that he survived 3 massacres, because there's one in Dakota before the one on the Colorado River and the one up in Oregon on the Umpqua River, where most of his men are killed, but he survived, only to die alone 3 years later in the desert, Cimarron Desert of Oklahoma or New Mexico, on the Santa Fe Trail. The only part he didn't know after his 7-year career. And Morgan speculates that he was going to write a book on the West. And that was the part he didn't know, which is why after he's retired, he signed up to lead a wagon train there and was out searching for water for a shortcut when he was killed by Comanches, who were at one time Utah and Colorado Indians, cousins of the Ute and Paiutes who had moved on into the Great Plains and were the best horsemen some people have ever seen. Some people said they slept on the horse. They could ride on the side of the horse so nobody could shoot him, and shoot arrows from under the horse's neck, riding at full speed. 6 arrows in a minute. And they got Jed when he was all alone. But before he died, he shot the chief. And eventually his family got his guns back, at least. That's the end of the story. At the beginning, he comes west in 1822. By 24, he's one of Ashley's partners in the company. He's that good a leader. When he's really young, he's born, as the sign says, in 1799. So he's still in his early 20s, and he becomes the partner when another partner retired. Ashley starts the rendezvous. Jed's involved. The next year, Ashley retires. Jed buys the company and has 2 partners. One is Jackson, for whom Jackson Hole's named. The other is William Sublette, who was a bourgeois, one of the, that's bourgeois, I guess, but it's written that way in American diaries. He's been a foreman of the company, and he's got some brothers in it too. They become the heads of the company, and at that rendezvous in Hiram, Utah, where Hiram is now, the second rendezvous, they decided that they would split the 40 or 50 trappers that worked for the Smith trapping company, and the main group would go up on the Snake River with Sublette and Jackson, but 18 would go with Jed Smith looking for new beaver trapping areas that nobody knew about that are southwest. And when they come to Utah Lake, they go up Spanish Fork Canyon, looking for a Ute Indian chief to ask him where he thinks beaver might be. They find him picking berries in the Soldier Summit area, and they go over and trap for 2 days on the White or Price River, decide it's no good, look out east toward Green River. That doesn't look like any place that beavers would be. They cut through the mountains to Salina Canyon, mid-canyon, and come west. Meet one old Indian lady who couldn't run away. Paiutes used to live in Sevier County, but they've left before the Mormons come and gone to the Cousharam and Circleville area. Some of Cousharam is still Sevier County, I know, but they left because the first place the Ute and New Mexico slave traders came, capturing Paiute women and children and Goshutes up by Utah Lake, was Sevier Valley. And there were still a few there when Jed Smith came in 1826 and again in 27. Most fled. In fact, one of the things Jed Smith noticed is every group of Wickiups had a big pile of brush to light on fire as soon as they saw danger approach. Smoke signals. Now, he trapped on the Sevier for a couple days, and they didn't do very well there. They were not looking for the best route for the pack mules, which will come starting in 1829. Just a couple years later, Jed Smith decided to come up over these Wasatch Mountains by way of Clear Creek, but he is blazing the first branch of the old Spanish Trail. The main branch will go, as was said earlier, not through Circleville Canyon, but around through Monroe and Poverty Flats and the old uranium mining area, and back to Marysville, Bob's home. That's the main route. And the first fur trappers will go there in 1830, William Woolskill and George C. Yount. They didn't find any beaver down there when they tried to trap. Of course, they were doing it during snowstorms in December and January, 1830-31. They are given the credit for the main route of the old Spanish Trail, but Jed Smith blazed half the trail. The middle part, from Salina to Needles, California. From Needles, it was blazed by, and this is a slight slip from the information there, Francisco Garces, a Franciscan missionary in 1776, the same year as Dominguez and Escalante are blazing the trail from Santa Fe to Utah Lake. Garces is doing it from Needles to San Gabriel. And Jed will follow his route, but he's blazed half the trail between Salina and Needles. And it's a desolate, difficult trail, and not many beaver. When they got through this area and on through past where Cove Ford will be 40 years later, and they're heading south, the first mountain he gets up on with his telescope and sees the same warning fire smoke signals all the way to beaver. And the Indians, except for two, have all vanished into hiding. There may have been 500 along the route where Jed Smith went, who left and hid. He didn't see very many of them. When he went on down where I-15 goes now, over the Black Ridge into the St. George area on the Rio Virgin, Indians finally came out and engaged in conversation and traded with him for corn and pumpkins. He had trinkets and things. His men were already starting to eat horse meat. They hadn't had any antelope since they left the Cedar City area. So they were glad to trade with these Tonnacan Paiutes. And then go on down the Colorado River. When they got to the Muddy River, the Moapa Paiutes in Nevada, there were 2 Mojave Indians with them who said, hey, there are lots of beaver on the Colorado and they've got a lot of horses. Our people have got horses to trade you. So he decided to go that way. One of the great quotes on these signs over here is from Jed's diary here, where he admits he's got wanderlust. It says he wants to be the first Anglo-American, non-Indian, to see some country and explore it. Boy, he sure fulfilled that wish. But he is antsy. He doesn't stay put. On that trip, he traveled 1,400 miles in less than a year. After he goes to San Gabriel and gets in trouble with the Mexican government and finally gets away, promises to leave the state, goes up through Cajon Pass and turns left. That means he's still in California for a long time in the San Joaquin Valley, where he leaves 16 of his trappers trapping for a whole year. He finds as good a trapping area as they ever had on the Missouri River. That's what he wanted to do. He's poaching, but the Mexican government doesn't have any interest in those furs anyway. In fact, later the British, Peter Skene Ogden, has permission to trap where Jed Smith and his men found that good place. Smith and 2 guys go across the Sierras in the snow, cross the Jordan River up by Great Salt Lake Airport when the Jordan River's flooded. The 2 guys with him, Goebel and Evans can't swim, so they cross on a raft. They go to the 3rd rendezvous within days of when Jed Smith said he'd be back a year later, after 1,400 miles. How long does he stay? About a week. Then he chooses another 18 guys, including Goebel, and they go over the same route up here again. That time, half of them will be killed on the Mojave, among Mojave, on the Colorado River. And then they'll go to Oregon, and the rest, except for 3, will be killed. 4, including Smith. And his career is amazing, and the diaries survive. The maps don't, but we know what was on the maps. There's good evidence of that. And by the way, if you want to see the details of this, it's too cold to give you any more now. An article I wrote on Jedediah Smith in Utah will be published in the Utah Historical Quarterly this fall. Now, not too many people subscribe to it over here. We'll get Mayor Ogden to have the library subscribe. I know that Snow College already does, but that one's worth reading, and there'll be a copy of it at the museum up here if you want to come up and do a little homework on the details of this sometime. It's an amazing contribution to the geographic knowledge of this North American continent, and nobody saw more of it as an individual than he did for his time, certainly the 1820s. Fremont's not till the 40s. Lewis and Clark are the 1803, that's true. And all of them together really make an important contribution, but there's no more important one than Jed's. And maybe they didn't need to know about Clear Creek Canyon, but this is right where he came, and this is a perfect monument to him. There are a lot more of them in California, but he didn't do as much for them as he did for us. So I'm glad you have your interest in him, and that you're here, and that we'll always have this. Now we need to let the outsiders find out how to get here so they can see it. Thank you very much. Yes?
How did he die?
He was exploring for a well or a spring in the desert between New Mexico and Oklahoma, and he was caught by Comanches alone, and they used their lances, their spears on him. These for you?
I think so.
Okay. Thank you for all you've done.
No, thank you for coming. So, we'd like to give one big round of applause again for him coming all the way up to give us a good speech. I hope you all learned something good about Jedediah. He was a great man, and he lived a short life, and there was a lot he did to the face of the West. So, So today, part of the event, we actually have some items that have been donated or given or brought. We're going to insert part of the construction. Bob Leonard was building this, is we decided to do a time capsule. So inside the monument, in the middle of that, there's a void. And so there's a time capsule that we've put some items together, had a few donated items from the Jedediah Smith Society, a couple things. From Fremont Indian State Park, we're putting a pin in there, a patch, and a medallion. There's quite a few items, and each of these things, a lot of them have reference to some of Jedediah's life. So Bob Leonard, we know he's the gentleman that was the moving factor to get it put in right here where it's at.
As he was Fremont Indian State Park.
And he has a lot of history in this whole canyon. And if we could give Bob a big round of applause just for all he's done here to help us get this done. He refused to speak. I invited him to be a guest speaker, but at least I've got him up here. We're going to talk about a few of these items that are going in the time capsule. And while he's talking about a few of these items, I've got a few gentlemen here. We're going to lift the top off and let you guys have an opportunity to look down into the time capsule. And if anybody's around, we've talked of doing a 50 or 100 year. We haven't 100% decided what the time capsule time frame is going to be, but we'll figure that out here shortly. And we're going to show you what we're putting in it. Go ahead, Bob. Just hold both of them if you could.
Oh, okay. Back 150 years ago, the big issue now is whether wolves should be reintroduced to Utah, where they were all over the place 150 years ago. And when Captain Gunnison, looking for the railroad, came through Salina Canyon and camped over at Spear Lake, he was killed by Ute Indians. And when they found him 3 days later, they basically found a thigh bone and a piece of skull cap with gray hair. So in honor of that, we have the gray wolf that's going in our time capsule. Jed Smith was a trapper. That's how he made his living. He trapped and traded, so they were always after the beaver. So we have a beaver as symbolic of his trade going in the time capsule. Justy. I hope not. We have one of these for the old Spanish Trail where I've been working for the last 6 years. It's bigger, but most of the people that came through this area in the early 1820s and 30s and 40s were Catholics. So we're going to put in a crucifix. And most of you may know Stephanie and Gary Moulton. They managed the Fish Lake Lodge, and they are both involved in officers in the Fish Lake cutoff of the old Spanish Trail. And they had given us a whole package of memorabilia from the lodge to go in the time capsule, but we found that they violated their permit by not flattening the rocks on their walkways at the lodge, so we've had to remove those items. We have a coin from the Fremont Indian State Park. We have a patch from the Fremont Indian State Park. And we are taking donations for the time capsule, so if you'd like to come up and put a $10 or $20 bill in the ammo can, please do. We have a photograph of a very large grizzly bear, and most of you may have known, just like Hugh Grass from The Revenant, that Jedediah Smith was mauled by a grizzly bear, and it tore off about half his face. And he had his men sew everything back together, and when they sewed his ear back on, it's reported that they sewed it on upside down. Oh, I don't. And this is a Bible. Jed Smith always carried the Bible with him. He was a very righteous man, never swore, never cussed, never messed with women, probably was happier for it. But he carried a Bible, and it was always with him. And this is from Mayor Ogden. And we all suspect that Mayor Ogden is trying to buy his way into heaven.
He's got a good start.
And of course, we all know that Utah really kind of belonged to the Native American people before the pioneers got here. And actually it belonged to Spain, and then it belonged to Mexico, and then it belonged to the United States after the War of 1848 with Mexico. And there was a junior representative, United States congressman, who said that the war with Mexico was nothing but a land grab by the United States. And do you know who that junior congressman was? He wasn't reelected, but that junior congressman was Abraham Lincoln. We've had a lot of help from the backcountry horsemen. So we have kerchiefs that they've made that'll go in there. And you can see it's a variety of stuffs. Whoever opens this up in 100 years is probably going to scratch their head and think, now what do stuffed animals really have to do with Jedediah Smith? But we've thought this out very, very carefully. Oh, they must have gotten their stones flattened on their walks, because this is the package from the Fish Lake Lodge, and it's a beaver and a Christmas ornament from Fish Lake. And of course that's very important, because Kit Carson, taking the Fish Lake cutoff, the old Spanish Trail, went right by where the lodge would stand. So he went right by Fish Lake. In fact, they stopped at Twin Creeks, and the fish were swarming, and they got in icy cold water up to their knees and threw fish out by the hundreds. And they were hungry. When they came into the Fish Lake Basin, they were ready to eat one of their horses. And we do have some coins that need to be accompanied by 10, 20, $100 bills. It's Sacagawea and, you know, the American dollar series and coins and whatever. I'm not sure what this rock is about.
It's called an anchor. Did we talk about this one, the Jedediah Smith Society?
Oh, yeah. Why don't you do that?
Okay, we had some folks from the Jedediah Smith Society out of California send us some brochures. In here there's a picture of the group, a collage, and they also included some 2016 coins, quarters, and there's some interesting stuff in it. So, is there anything else we want to...
Let's ask Jeff Roberts.
Jeff Roberts.
Right here, Jeff Roberts, who donated the baseball
Okay,
card.
so I'm pretty sure this is going to be one of those monuments. Doesn't really have a lot to do with Jedediah Smith, but in 100 years, you know what this pack of baseball cards will be worth? So I think we're including that just for fun, right?
Plus he was a donator, and I'm really kind of afraid of him.
No, you've got to have something fun. You know, I've seen different time capsules be opened, like an antique car back east. They put a Cadillac in a time capsule, and when they uncovered the time capsule, water had affected the car. So they didn't unveil the car that day. They waited a year or so to restore it back to what it should have been, and then they unveiled it. So we're hoping our time capsule is protected, is safe. We will seal it up here shortly, but like he said, we're always taking more to go with these partners here. But so that's what we're putting in the time capsule. We'll seal it up here within the week and get all this stuff put in there in a safe hold box. So, you have anything else you want to add, Bob?
I just wanted to take a few minutes to talk about the shortcomings of Utah State Parks.
Yeah. No, working on this exhibit here has been a great. It's went both ways. It's been a challenge and it's been a blessing. I think being here at the park, I've been here just a year. I failed to start off with announcing who I even was. I'm actually the park manager here at Fremont Indian State Park, superintendent, some people call it. So I've been here just a year now, and I'm really excited that we can get more things added to the park to make it more accessible for more people to enjoy more things around. So that's kind of the goal we have here, is letting people know what's offered. Kevin Taylor. So I've been with state parks now for over 10 years, and I've enjoyed every moment of it. And so I'm here and planning on being around a while. Sorry about that. I failed that too. So so how the rest of the thing will be is, if you guys want to come up and take a look at the end of the monument, you're welcome to come up and take a look in to see the time capsule. We really encourage you to read the plaques that are placed here, even though there might be a few little inaccuracies or not full detail, whichever way you want to look at it. We've done a pretty good roadway coming and going. I hope you share this with your friends that you were here at the dedication. There's books about the monuments of Jedediah throughout the country. So take an opportunity to continually learn about history and about the things that are. So for today, everybody that's here, I know we have pretty cool weather out, but we do have a lunch planned. We planned it for 50 plus, and it looks like that's what's here. So if anybody wants to come partake of a lunch, we do have that prepared. It's going to be a hot dog type lunch. It's up in our Sam Stowe Canyon, just at the maintenance building. Everybody's welcome to come if you wish. We'd encourage people to come. We could socialize there out of the wind. And then from there, I'd like to again thank everybody that was part of this. This was a really good cooperative effort between multiple agencies, with State Parks and Forest Service working together, with trail grants, support from the ATV community, support from the locals that are here in the area, such as the mayor and even folks from Utah. So we'd now close the ceremony with that. We'll actually invite the scout group to come up and retire the colors. At the conclusion of the retirement of the colors, everybody's free to mosey about, and we'll actually head up and finish preparing the lunch. So thank you for coming, and we'll turn the time over to the scout group to retire the colors.